Hi, this is Barry Blanchard. I'm going to talk about hanging wallpaper on a ceiling. It's becoming increasingly popular. It can be difficult because you're working against gravity. I'm going to demonstrate a technique that will make it easier for you to control the wallpaper. That process is called the California roll. You'll see I have a laser line set up. I've done my engineering. I know where I want to start. You'll also notice I have a roll of pasted wallpaper in my right hand. It's rolled up on a cardboard core. This is critical to the California roll. What it does is support the full width of the paper. Paper can be floppy. If it flops and you get a crease, you can't open up the paper to put it on the ceiling. I also have about 3 to 4 feet of paper that's open. You'll see that in a minute. We're going to get that first 3 to 4 feet of paper installed exactly as we want, with the proper pattern at the crown and lining up on the laser line. Well, let's see how this works. Need to position myself so I can get started. The laser is on the floor and it's an old house, so it tends to jump. But when I'm hanging the paper to the laser line, I'm going to stop so it gets still. I line up the pattern at the crown where I want and the edge of the paper on the laser line. It's important to be consistent. If you're hanging to the inside of the line, do it all the way across the ceiling. If you hang to the outside line, that's fine, but be consistent. Hang to the outside, the full length of the ceiling. You'll see how easy it is for me to control that paper with one hand while I smooth out the bubbles and get the paper adhered to the ceiling with the other hand. Also notice how that core holds the paper straight across the ceiling. I like to keep the rolled up paper close to the ceiling. Again, makes it easier to control. Once I get that first 3 to 4 feet where I want it, it'll make the rest of the ceiling go easily. I reach under and pull out the far end of the paper, and that releases some more paper for me to install. Again, keeping it on the laser, keeping the roll close to the ceiling, sweeping it out, and continuing to the end of the ceiling. With this graphic, I'm going to show you how to cut, hand paste, and book the California roll. This ceiling is 160 inches long. We'll be hanging from left to right. First, let's determine how long the sheet will be. The pattern repeat is 22 inches. Divide the length of the ceiling by 22 inches, which gives us the number of repeats we need to cover the ceiling. Round this number up to the next whole number and multiply by the repeat. In this case, the length of the sheet will be 176 inches, which will provide us with trim on both ends. When you see the flashing important sign, it means I'm going to reiterate something that you need to keep in mind whenever you do the California roll. I'm going to suggest that if you're not familiar with doing ceilings with the California roll, that you pull your sheet lengths to a full repeat. The California roll has a series of steps that are done sequentially. Keeping the process consistent and simple will help ensure success. If you remember in the video demo, I started hanging with a short fold. The short fold is typically around 42 inches long, but can be adjusted according to your reach. I wouldn't go less than 36 inches, as you want to have enough paper on the ceiling to establish a good line. Don't make the fold so long, though, that you can't control it. The short fold is 42 inches. That means that the long fold will be 134 inches. For each of these, there is a center point where the actual fold will be. For the 42 inch, the fold will be at 21 inches. For the 134 inch length, the fold will be at 67 inches. When you're doing the California roll, you must make a pencil mark at the midpoint of the long fold, in this case, 67 inches. Do this when cutting your sheets. As we proceed, it will become clear why we do this, but I will repeat, you always need to have some way to identify the midpoint of the long fold. Here we have a full sheet of paper on the table ready to be hand pasted. For reference, I have left the lines on showing the fold lines for the short and long fold and the line where the two folds will overlap when booked. In practice, all you need is an identification mark at the center point of the long fold. When booking pasted paper, the end of the sheet is folded towards the middle. As set up here, the short fold would be easy enough to paste and book, but it means we would have to get the remainder of the sheet pasted before the long fold could be booked. Yikes. There is a solution. Paste and book the long fold first. With the California roll, this will always be the best option, whether pasting by hand or with a pasting machine. So let's move the paper to the other end of the table and paste the first 6 feet of the long fold. We will still need a way to make the booking of this end manageable. What I do is make a series of short folds, approximately 14 inches, that can be folded on top of each other. This is typically called the accordion fold. Continue making accordion folds until you are getting close to the fold line where you have your reference mark. Move the paper down so you can paste the next section of paper. At this point, you can easily handle the stack of booked paper while folding at the midpoint. Once the fold is made, you can start unfolding the accordion. Slide the paper down, finish the pasting, and book the short fold. You have pasted and booked your first California roll. We still need to get the pasted and booked sheet onto the cardboard core, but first I will show you how the pasting process works in a pasting machine. A quick note, we know that the short fold is hung first. With a pattern wallpaper on ceilings, you can either hang the top or the bottom of the pattern first. However, with the room at the right, you have an existing wallpaper and we're going to be matching the ceiling to that paper. In this case, the short fold will start at the bottom of the pattern where it matches the top of the pattern at the ceiling line. In other cases, the short fold can be either top or bottom of the pattern, depending on what works best for your layout. I have a full bolt of wallpaper loaded onto the pasting machine. I identified the pattern that I wanted to start with. I rolled the bolt so that the long fold will be pasted first, just like we did when we were hand pasting. What you see is the end of the long fold plus trim set up in the pasting machine. I will be able to get 2 sheets from this bolt. The top arrow in this video is the front edge of the pasting machine. The bottom arrow on the screen is the cutting bar. The distance from the front edge of the cutting bar is 17 inches. In other words, there is 17 inches of paper in the pasting machine. This measurement is specific to this model of pasting machine. If you have a different make or model, you should determine this length for yourself. When pulling a sheet to the full 176 inches, I will stop when the counter gets to 159 inches, which is 17 inches less than the 176. I can make a visual check of the pattern at the front edge of the pasting machine to make sure I'll be cutting at the proper place. We will see this in action shortly. The sheet length is 176 inches. The long fold is 134 inches. I will make a reference mark at 67 inches. I've set the counter to 0, which starts at the cutting bar. So I'm pulling the sheet out to 67, keeping an eye on the counter. Can start a fold. That's one accordion fold. Let's look at this from the other angle. So we're at the end of the table. I set the counter to 0. We're starting at the cutting bar, so that's the 0 point. I'm going to pull this out until I get to 67 inches. You can't quite see it, but I'm making a couple of accordion folds. We'll get back to that in a minute. And then I'm going to the cutting bar and making my reference mark at 67 inches. Again, if you don't do this, if you forget it, you will be in a world of hurt trying to figure out where it should be. It's an important point to find out whether you're pulling through the pasting machine or doing it by hand. Mark that center point. Let's go back to the original view. I have my 67-inch mark done. I'm going to continue to make some accordion folds, about 14 inches. It could be a little less, a little more, but you don't want to have too many folds, but you still want to make it easy to handle. Now I'm just looking for my center mark, my reference mark, and there it is. See how easy it is to make that fold. You can start unfolding the accordion fold. I'll need to pull a little further. The next reference mark on the counter I want is 159 inches. As I talked about before, finish unfolding the accordion fold. That's the long fold. It's completed. Everything's neat and clean and easily under control. Now I'm going to lift up this paper to look at the front edge of the pasting machines where I can see the pattern. This way I can be sure I'm getting the pattern exact. Make a little notch so when I pull it through the pasting machine, I'll know it's at the cutting bar by reference to the notch. So we cut the short fold, we booked it, we have one piece pasted with a short fold ready to go. And because we're pulling at the full repeat, I know that this part of the paper is the true pattern for the long fold. We'll just go through it one more time. I pulled to 67 inches, made a couple of accordion folds. Pencil is out. I'm marking the reference point for the middle of the long fold. Getting that reference mark near the end of the table. Easily setting the paper and undoing the accordion folds. Pulling to 159, knowing there's 17 more inches in the machine, getting it to the full length I want. 176 inches. Long fold is booked. Now I'm going to cut this underneath on the leading edge of the pasting machine because I know that's the correct length. It eliminates an extra piece of paper in the pasting machine. I could have pulled it to 176, but eliminating that eliminates a pasted sheet I have to throw away. We're left with an end roll as long as it can possibly be. This is the final stage of the California roll. I've unrolled one of the pasted pieces and I'm putting it face down on the table. It's half face down right now. I'm showing you where the two pieces overlap. That's the short fold that's closest to us. So all of that goes face down on the table. You take your cardboard core and you roll up the paper from the long end. The long end will be hung last. It's going on the core first. Roll it as far as the overlap, and we have a piece ready to go to the ceiling. So we've successfully put together a California roll. Let's just review it. So we determined what we want for pattern at the short sheet, and then we cut our sheets to the full repeat, making sure we have enough for selvage at both the top and the bottom. We know the short fold is going to be installed first, but we need to make a center point reference mark from the end of the long fold. So we go to the end of the sheet where the long fold is, measure back, having calculated the distance to where we make a pencil mark reference point. We also know that we need to paste the long fold first. We will use accordion folds to help us control the paper. Once the sheets are all pasted, the short fold is booked, we can unroll the sheet, put it face down with the overlaps facing the table, roll up the paper on the core from the long end to the point where the overlaps are. It will be helpful to see this in action. Let's take a look at this short video. Here I am with that last piece of paper that we pasted and rolled, ready to hang the next piece on the ceiling. Just talking about position for a second, I like to be close to the ceiling. I'm working off a plank that's stretched between two step ladders, so I have limited control. I'm a little high. I do like to be about 3 inches from the ceiling. I'm facing the direction where the paper is going. I have my head under the seam line. That enables me to have the maximum reach, and I can see everything I'm doing. So let's get started. I'm unfolding that short fold, and I'm going to be looking for the match since I already have a piece on the ceiling. Notice I have the core perpendicular and close to the ceiling. It helps control everything. Once I'm happy with the seam, I can see it clearly from this angle to see both that it's tight, but there are no overlaps. Just with the first piece, you want to make sure this is just where you want it. For instance, if you were to start with a slight gap or a slight overlap, the paper would constantly be fighting you more and more as you went down the ceiling. So I have that where I want it. I can reach under and unfold the far end, again, providing me with additional paper to hang. I will say that sometimes on long ceilings, that flap that you unfold can get so long that it'll come down onto the plank. There are technical ways to deal with that, but that's not part of this presentation. You will see me making a short fold in just a minute to help control. This can be done with 2 people. If you have 2 people, one will just control the core. They won't be doing in the installation, setting seams or anything. That you just need to tell them as the installer when you want them to move. You just saw me make that short fold. Once you unroll all the paper, you want to keep the core because it continues to support the paper in front of you. I have one more section I'm going to hang before the video ends. I want you to notice, once I get this off the core, I'm going to lower the far end of the core. Again, hang onto the core to keep it under control. See what happens when I lower that far end of the core. Gravity takes over. Just another demonstration of why the California roll is an excellent technique. And here's the finished room. California roll worked great. I hope this inspires you to practice it for yourself. And I hope it leads to many successful ceiling installations. Thank you.